Classic Rock, Q1043.
I say good morning to Andy Ostroy. He is the director of a wonderful, heartbreaking, but loving documentary, which you can now see on HBO. It's called Adrienne, and it's actually a love letter to his wife, Adrienne Shelly. You may have heard of Adrienne Shelly. You certainly know of her work if you stroll through Broadway, because Waitress on Broadway, that is her show. It was based on a movie she wrote, Waitress. She never got to see the movie come out. She never got to see the hit on Broadway that was nominated for Tony Awards. She was murdered. Her daughter at the time was just 3 or 2.
A little under 2, a little under 3.
A little under 3. And now this documentary, I really felt like, yeah, now I know why you fell in love with Adrienne Shelly. What an extraordinary work, and so difficult, because you're not only going back to the most painful time of your life, but you're interviewing your daughter. And it's just the most extraordinary thing to see. Why did you decide, Andy, to do this documentary now?
Well, there's that old expression, timing is everything. And often we can't figure out what that timing is. It just happens. You just wake up one day and you decide that today is the day I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. I had been writing a book for a couple of years. But then one night I took Adrienne's mom to see the Broadway musical. And before the show started, she was talking to a few women from out of town sitting behind us. And at some point, she, in sort of an ambiguous way, said that her daughter had, this is her daughter's show. And one of the women said, "Oh, that's awesome. She here tonight." And you think about how many people in that audience of perhaps 11 or 1,200 people knew who she was or didn't know who she was. And that's when it just clicked that I'm going to stop this book and I'm going to make a film. And because Adrienne was a filmmaker, and that's how she told stories. And I thought the most fit, if I'm going to honor her, then I'm going to make a film, because that's what she did.
I could not believe, Andy, that you reached out to the man serving time in prison now for the murder of your wife and asked to meet with him. I just can't imagine too many people who would do that. Why was this so pressing for you? Why did you want to do that? I mean, I can't imagine anything more painful than when you found her body.
Well, that is totally understandable. And you're not the first person that asked me that question or presented that curiosity. But for me, in the way I'm wired, it was more painful not knowing what happened that day. We're all different. Some people can just sort of close their eyes, tuck things away, move on with life and pretend. I often wish I could do that. I wish I was that kind of person. I used to call them whatever people. We all have them in our lives. You ask them something like, whatever. I'm not a whatever person. I've got to know what I need to know. And sometimes that is painful. But one of the things I understood early on is, and this is one of the advantages of getting older, is that you kind of not only know what you don't do and don't know and can't do, you also have a pretty good sense of what you can do. And, when I was in college, my degree was journalism. I've been writing for years. I felt confident that I had an ability to compartmentalize, okay, because I had a goal. And that goal was to find out what happened that day, because he had lied during his confession when he was arrested. He lied during his sentencing. And I just was unsettled. I couldn't go through the rest of my life unsettled. I needed to know, how did they encounter each other? What happened? And I knew I had a strong sense that I would be able to just switch hats. I had two key hats when I walked in that room. One is the husband of this woman who was brutally murdered by him. Another hat was director. And so it was a challenge on many levels. But I was able to just talk with him when he was in front of me, to get what I needed. And then if you watch the movie, you see what happens when he left the room. But I knew that I would be able to compartmentalize that. And I got what I needed from him. And I also was able to humanize her for him, which was the other big goal, so that she isn't just his murder victim, that she's a wife and a mother and a daughter and a sister and a friend and a colleague. I wanted him to think about that. I wanted that to haunt him for the rest of his life, I wanted him to see the life he took away.
He staged the cover up to look like a suicide, and you had to live with that for several days, knowing full well that your wife would not have committed suicide. And you struggled with that with the police, and they ultimately made the arrest and came to the conclusion that you had already come to.
Mm-hmm.
Did it help you at all? How did it help you thinking about this after meeting with him?
That didn't play into any of it, and to be honest, the point of the film is a celebration of her life.
Right.
Whenever you make a biographical film about somebody, if they're not alive, on some level, you have to touch upon their death. And so my goal was not to dwell on that at any point during filming or afterwards, or even now. It's to focus on the celebration of her life, who she was. The goal of the film was to bring her back to life for audiences, even for 99 minutes, to have them like her, get to know her, fall in love with her, mourn her loss, and ultimately discover her if they hadn't already, to go back and look at her films, even the short films, just sort of see how her career moved from, playwright to short filmmaker to writing Waitress, which was her swan song, and see who she was as a person. And so the film has three themes: life, death, aftermath. So the aftermath part is how the family navigates through the unthinkable. And the other two questions of the film was, who was Adrienne Shelly and what really happened that day? So even though there are three parts to the film, they're not equally weighted. It's not like 33 and a third, 33 and a third, 33 and a third. So what I hope viewers take away from the film is not the sensational true crime stuff, but the celebration of her life.
I'm speaking with Andy Ostroy. He is the director of Adrienne, which is a documentary you can now see on HBO. It is not your ordinary documentary. It is a love letter to his late wife, Adrienne Shelly, who starred in over 20 films, including Hal Hartley's indie classics, The Unbelievable Truth and Trust. And she also was the writer and director of Waitress, the movie. And that ultimately led to the still going on Broadway show, Waitress, which has been on Broadway for 5 years, which says a lot right there. You didn't have you couldn't just shut down after you lost your wife, because you had Sophie, which was a blessing.
Well, it was for me. It's not always that case. Again, everybody is wired differently. There are people who, when tragedy strikes, they withdraw and they break and they stay broken. I've had people, I've had young people talk to me about their own parents who, when somebody, a mother died or a father died, it was as if both parents had died because the other person just couldn't go on. And so I think about it a lot over the years, because people always, they throw props like, oh, what, how you did this. And the truth is, I never thought about any of it. I just woke up every day and realized I have a job to do. I have a kid. She has no mother anymore. So I was just thankful that I had I had tools. I had just the way I was wired. I just, it's like the old Chris Rock routine where like, I take care of my kids. Well, what do you want, a cookie? Like, I don't deserve any cookies. I did what every parent I think and hope would do, but I know from talking to people that not everybody does. And so I'm just very thankful that I was able to, I had the strength and the tools to do what I needed to do for my daughter and my family, for Adrienne and ultimately, myself.
I know that Adrienne was always writing, always creating. I imagined she had started other projects that went unfinished. Are there? And is there any consideration to you finishing those projects for her?
Yeah, well, one was done right after she died. I often look back on that first year after she died. I didn't really spend much time at all in therapy, but within 12 months, I got one of her unproduced scripts made into a movie called Serious Moonlight. It was directed by Cheryl Hines, and it starred Meg Ryan and Tim Hutton, Justin Long, and Kristen Bell. This was in the can 13 months after she died.
Wow.
That was my therapy. And also during that period, the Adrienne Shelly Foundation had been formed right away. So, within 7 months after we started the foundation, Cynthia Wade, who was one of our early grant recipients, she won an Oscar for her short film, which we helped fund. So those are the things that kind of kept me going. As far as her other works, yeah, I mean, I could turn the camera around and show you like just a drawer full of scripts,
Yeah.
And even in the film, you see what she was working on, this happiness documentary, in between bigger acting gigs, writing gigs. And, so that's something that's a natural to be worked on and put out there. And then there are other things happening too, which one in particular that I can't really speak about right now, but on some level, I have, dedicated a part of my life to furthering her legacy. I was madly in love, so that was ripped away.
We could tell. That was clear, Andy.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
And so I felt, aside from my own pain, that there was this incredible injustice that was heaped on our family and Adrienne herself. And so where I can do for her what she can't do for herself, I will.
Is there anything else you want us to know or you want the audience to know about Adrienne or the documentary? We only have about a minute left.
Well, I hope they watch the film and I hope they see who she was as a person and how unique she was and what made her so special. And ultimately why I fell madly in love with her and why her friends loved her, why audiences loved her, why the camera loved her. And just to appreciate a beautiful story that, we're opening that window into a very rare universe. And I hope they do go back and check out her films and discover who she was as an artist and not only as a human.
Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for making the documentary. And by the way, these two met on Match.
We did.
So see, there is a lot of hope out there. Okay. Thank you so much, Andy. Andy, yes, thank you, and happy holidays to you and Sophie. It was good to see you again, and good. This documentary, you really need to see it. And coming up next, well, in a 12-month period, we lost for the first time in America 100,000 people to drug overdoses, and we're going to be talking to Cindy Bellino, who is the owner and CEO of Just Believe Recovery Centers, and she's offering scholarships. She's offering free treatment for some who are addicted. So tune in. That next, Q104.3.
New York's classic rock, Q104.3.